The Australian outback at sunset is quiet in a way that feels unnatural. The dirt glows orange. The wind barely moves the dry grass. A small mound of earth sits behind a farmhouse. On that mound, a 4-year-old boy is playing alone. His gray sun hat lies slightly crooked on his head. His blue shirt shows a cartoon minion smiling brightly. His tiny boots kick dust into the air. 30 minutes later, the hat is gone. The boots are gone. The boy is gone. No footprints leading away. No cries heard across the open land. No sign of a struggle. Just a silent outback stretching for thousands of empty acres. And that's when investigators quietly realize something unsettling. Children don't simply disappear in the open desert without leaving a trace. So what really happened to Gus Lamont? Did he wander into the wilderness? Or did someone make sure he never came back? At around 5 p.m. on September 27, 2025, 4-year-old August Gus Lamont was playing outside his family's homestead at Oak Park Station in South Australia. According to family members, Gus had climbed onto a small mound of dirt near the house. It was the kind of moment that happens in rural homes every day. A child playing, a grandmother inside the house, the outback stretching in every direction. 30 minutes later, his grandmother stepped outside to call him in. Gus was gone. Not hiding, not wandering nearby, just gone. The family searched the property for 3 hours before calling police. But by the time authorities arrived, night was already falling across the desert, and the search would quickly become one of the largest missing child operations in Australian history. Oak Park Station is not a normal property. It covers 60,000 hectares of land. That's nearly 150,000 acres. The nearest town, Yunta, has a population of roughly 60 people. Adelaide, the nearest major city, sits 300 kilometers away. In the first days of the search, hundreds of rescuers, military personnel, helicopters, drones, search dogs, Aboriginal trackers, scanned an area covering over 700 square kilometers. And yet, not a single confirmed trace of Gus was found. A 4-year-old boy disappeared from an isolated sheep station in the Australian outback. No body, no clothing, no evidence, just open land. At first, police believed Gus may have wandered away from the homestead. Experts say a child his age can travel 3 to 8 kilometers over several days if lost. But the Australian outback is unforgiving. Temperatures swing violently, water is scarce, and the land hides dangers few outsiders notice. Abandoned mine shafts, dry wells, animal dens, and endless scrub. Rescuers began searching every possible hazard. Mine shafts, dry riverbeds, animal trails, and still nothing. In remote communities, stories begin quickly. Some locals whispered about vanishing points in the outback, places where travelers disappear without explanation. Stories told by truck drivers, stories repeated by miners, stories about strange lights on empty plains. But investigators had simpler explanations. The terrain is vast. A small child can disappear quickly, and wind can erase footprints within minutes. Yet something still bothered experienced trackers. There were almost no tracks at all. 3 days after Gus vanished, the search expanded dramatically. Military aircraft joined the mission. Specialist search teams combed through thick scrub. Indigenous trackers, experts at reading ground disturbances, studied the soil. They expected to find something. A footprint, a dropped toy, a hat. But there was almost nothing. Search operations eventually covered 700 square kilometers of aerial scanning, 100 square kilometers of ground searches, multiple drone sweeps, thermal imaging flights, mine shaft inspections up to 20 meters deep. Rescuers examined 6 abandoned mine shafts located 5 to 12 kilometers from the homestead. Every shaft was inspected. Every one came back empty. After weeks of searching, police quietly admitted something disturbing. They had no physical evidence of where Gus went. As investigators reconstructed the timeline, small inconsistencies began to appear. Nothing dramatic at first, just minor details. But when detectives compared statements, the timeline became unclear. Police eventually concluded someone on the property may know more than they were saying. Months later, investigators made a major announcement. The case had been reclassified. Not a missing person case, a major crime investigation. Authorities identified a suspect who lived at the property. But there was a problem. No body, no crime scene, no evidence of violence, just suspicion. Detectives kept returning to the same troubling question. If Gus wandered into the wilderness, where was the evidence? Normally, lost child cases leave clues. Clothing, footprints, animal disturbance, something. In Gus's case, almost nothing appeared. Even experienced search volunteers found this strange. Some reported 90 hours of searching without finding a single trace of the child. Not even birds circling, not even animal activity, just empty land. Search teams checked hundreds of square kilometers, dozens of wells and shafts, multiple drone sweeps, thermal imaging flights, military search units, and still, the only confirmed clue was a single footprint that investigators later ruled out. For detectives, that raised a disturbing possibility. Maybe Gus never walked away at all. For months after the disappearance, police made another announcement. They had identified a suspect connected to the property. Authorities said the person's statements contained inconsistencies, and at some point during the investigation, that person stopped cooperating with police. But investigators still faced a massive obstacle. Without physical evidence, charges would be nearly impossible. The suspect has never been publicly named, and no one has been arrested. Today, the disappearance of Gus Lamont remains unsolved. Two explanations continue to dominate discussions. Theory 1, the outback took him. Gus wandered away from the house. Within minutes, he became lost in the vast scrub. Heat, dehydration, or terrain may have overwhelmed him. The desert erased the evidence. It happens more often than people realize. Theory 2, someone knows the truth. The lack of footprints, the timeline inconsistencies, the suspect who stopped cooperating, all point towards something far darker, something that happened much closer to home. Remember the numbers. For year-old child, 30 minutes alone, 60,000 hectare property, 700 square kilometers search area, hundreds of searchers, months of investigation, and still no trace. Somewhere in the Australian outback, there is an answer, maybe buried beneath the soil, maybe hidden in the silence of a vast empty property, or maybe locked inside someone's memory. But until that truth surfaces, the mystery remains. Because the most unsettling part of the Gus Lamont case isn't what investigators found. It's what they didn't. So the question still remains. Did the Australian wilderness swallow a child whole? Or did someone make sure he disappeared forever?